Hello and welcome to my world. I'm of course Redcast, and as you know, 7 nights a week I stream live over on Twitch, and the link to my Twitch channel can be found in the description below. One of the weekly features every Thursday, when the servers are working, I dedicate that night to Star Trek Online, and this week's Star Trek Online stream was focused on the five-part story arc of or series of missions that came out in 2011 that basically gave the players some real focus on the Romulan Star Empire and giving more of a sense of how things have really been going there since the destruction of the of Romulus, Remus, and everything associated with that, that basically served as a justification for J.J. Abrams to have his own series of Star Trek films that basically went nowhere. These missions were uh, among a series of story arcs that serve to expand on Star Trek Online's initial run of missions to provide new, fresh content, and these were released over the course of 5 weeks. So it served as a big way for players to log in before. Because Star Trek Online in its early days definitely had issues with keeping a consistent player base long before the game became a glorified grind fest. Everyone knows how I feel about that, but so I won't touch on that here. These missions are introduce key elements that have later became important parts of the story for the Federation side, and when the Romulan Republic expansion came out, these were basically the core things that were built upon. Now, since I am currently using a Cardassian in the Klingon Empire, it's part of a gimmick and tie-in with uh, the whole Year of the Klingon expansion that the developers say that they're doing for this game. The Klingon Empire really doesn't have much in the way of build up and tie in to these five specific missions. The Federation version of the story arc has several missions that lead into it. The and the Romulan Republic, it's basically the entire initial story arc for players is everything going towards these series of missions. The Klingons are not introduced to Hakiv, and the Federation is until the story arc, unless you do what the totally optional Nimbus 3 missions, which we of course we played last week. But these missions here, they are can be viewed as a self-contained story, as the story goes. Your respective government, depending on your faction, Federation or Klingon Defense Force, um, learned that the Vault, the Romulans, a huge testing facility for everything from Thalion weapons, Borg technology, and so forth. Things like all the bad juju that they were working on is suddenly emitting strange energy signatures that could indicate something bad is happening, and and the players has to take a shuttle into that system to infiltrate the facility to learn what's going on. You learn that there is a Reman freedom fighter named Obasek getting some Thalaron weapons to, try to fight for the freedom of his people. Kind of put you in a unique situation, regardless if you're associated with the Federation or the Klingon Empire. But the Federation is definitely anti-Thalerons, and the Klingons are not too thrilled of the use of Thalaron weapons. They view it as a coward's weapon. Um, the story continues where you learn that the Remans are trying to seek out the Tal Shiar, which is the Romulan Story Empire's uh, basic secret police, and as the Tal Shiar is definitely acting more against the will of of Empress Sela and doing their own thing as they are subservient to the Iconians and the build up to their return. So all sorts of things are happening here. The five missions in and of themselves are unique. It's actually one of the few missions in Star Trek Online that actually justifies players using their shuttlecrafts. There's only a couple of missions that actually focus on this. One is in the probably forgotten 4800 story arc, Operation Gamma, and there was a event mission involving the vault where take shuttles into the vault to try and stop uh the Romulan Star Empire from harassing the residents that took up the refugees that took up residence in the vault and basically have been converting it into a habitat facility. uh so so the first mission being shuttle focus is kind of unique. There's different mechanics and everything. As you actually end up having an opportunity to fight much larger vessels, a Mogai warbird and a standard bird of prey, and you're fighting in a shuttle. And sometimes, as the case of running is key. If you're playing on the Klingon defense side or the Romulan side, or um, of Romulan Republic side, your shuttle will have a cloaking device. So definitely, you're able to run and sneak out without much issue. If you're playing on the Federation side, you don't have access to a cloak unless you purchase an associated shuttle that does have one, and so it kind of makes things rather unique. Mine Enemy, which is arguably one of the more unique missions. You go to a planet that has Romulan refugees on it that are being exploited by a Ferengi, and learn that there's a Tal Shiar base hidden in the lower levels of a mine of magnesite, and you're introduced, unless you play the Nimbus story arc or are starting off on the Romulan Republic side, you're introduced to Hakiv, the leader of the Tal Shiar, who is definitely a villain of for a short period of time that you have to deal with, that you are tracking down, knowing that he is definitely has some schemes up his sleeves. Mine Enemy it is kind of infamous for the grand escape where you are running out of a collapsed mine or lightly jogging, depending, because of how the collapsing effects of rocks and stuff falling from the ceiling basically bounce off of everything. So it is like there's styrofoam, and definitely has kind of like that original series cheese to it, with how the debris bounces all over the place. Um, it is also a mission that has certainly gotten a bit of rework in terms of its cutscenes. Um, when and benefited from the addition of Star Trek Discovery stuff, where the developers have gone back and reworked some of the cutscenes to give them more of a cinematic feel. And depending on who your bridge officer is with you, that you take with you on your two-person away team, you kind of can get a unique shrug, as we saw last night with our Gorn science officer giving a rather unique shrug that just made me giggle for a couple of moments when I saw that. The third mission, which is really cool, is Frozen. You end up tracking Obasek and his freedom fighters to their base on an ice planet, and definitely get a unique. It has a unique vibe. There, you have to get into their facility by blowing a hole through it using a giant mining laser, which is really cool. And it's an and you get to get a chance to, for a lot of backstory. There are some Remans you can talk to and learn what their life is like, and you definitely get a lot of questions answered as to Opusec's mindset, and you end up getting a choice of either letting Opusec go or trying to apprehend them. So it's one of those missions where the outcome is really determined by the player. There's actually is in-game accolades or achievements for doing both, depending on your preference. You can try to arrest them or you can try to apprehend them. It just determines how the end of the mission works out. And this is, and like Mine Enemy, this mission definitely got some reworked cutscenes that definitely gives this mission a rather cinematic and dramatic flavor when you reach certain points, such as when you actually meet Obasek face to face in the heart of his base of operations. The fourth mission, and probably the one mission most people remember the most fondly or look forward to the most, is Colosseum. Um, Obasek asks the player to find a ship that has gone missing that actually is transporting Thalaron weapons. It's tracked to a remote system, and after dealing with a satellite that is basically a booby trap, and you're beaming back to your ship, the transporter beam is intercepted, and the player's captain, ends up in a testing facility where they have to fight in an arena in the classic Star Trek music. Is played as you and Slamek is a Reman refugee freedom fighter that's brainwashed, is trying to fight for their survival and so forth, is in escape from this facility, and you end up learning more about Haki's plans and everything that's going on, and it serves as more build up for the Iconians. There's actually a console that gives a whole bunch of backstories regarding the orders that Hakiv is trying to follow, that they are testing the limits of all the species in the Alpha Quadrant to again give the Iconians all the tactical advantage that they need to basically wipe everyone out rather simply when they arrive. Uh, But the Colosseum, in and of itself, is a mission that has not benefited from any real rework. A lot of the cutscenes in it are real janky, to say the least. I think the only real change to that mission that has taken place over the years has been putting a Mugatu in it in the and Slamic's getting a whole bunch of voice lines worked in over the years to make his character more consistent. And if you actually do the Nimbus 3 series of missions, Slamic will actually remember uh, the player and the vice versa. So there is a lot of tie-in and work associated there if you actually do a series of missions that unless you know they're there, most players, particularly new players, will not know about unless they're actually going through the missions that are available list on their log screens. The whole escape portion is kind of unique, as this mission has a issue in that regard, as you are supposed to escape through a pipe, but you actually got to that the floor portion leading to the escape pipe is a bit low, so you're literally jumping out of a pool of water and trying to hit the F key on your keyboard to initiate the transfer to the next portion of the mission. So, kind of surprised that has not been fixed ever since and that issue's been around for about I want to say 5 years now, and they never fixed it. And the cutscenes on it when Hakeem tracks you down and you learn that Slamek is a traitor. Uh, Hakeem doesn't really move his lips or anything, and it's just a big circle pan of all of his forces that are looking to basically blow the player away. The fifth and final mission of the story arc is cutting the cord, and it's just an action-packed climax. You have tracked Hakeem to his base, and it's basically an all-out firefight. You're chasing him down, looking to apprehend him, and this is a mission that on while the Federation side you have some direct interaction with Emperor Sela and other Romulan based missions, and of course she's a big part of the Romulan Republic story arc and things of that nature, and their series of missions. It's really the first time that the players on the Klingon side has any interaction with Sela, where you actually see her where she and Haki, she is basically berating Haki for his plans blowing up in his face, and it's like, oh, we can bring the Iconians here. Sela doesn't care. It's like, look at the destruction. We're losing a key planet and base and so forth. So she washes her hands of this entire situation, because she's got the full on rebellion on her hands, not just with half the Romulans going into the Republic. You got the Remans to deal with, and puts her in a tough position. Hakiva is killed off when it's confronted, and Sela basically is trying to do her part because, hey, it's one of her worlds that was attacked by technically enemies of the state, and including representatives of another rival power faction in the Alpha Quadrant, and she ends up getting adopted by Iconians, as it's later discovered, because so it ends up being a way. Initially, it was a way to write the character of Sela off, because when these missions were initially implemented, Denise Crosby did not take part in Star Trek Online until the Romulan Republic expansion was added several years later after these missions' initial release. So it was a way to make people wonder what happened to Sela, and also justify all the rogue elements and random space battles that used to take place out in sector space, where players could get pulled into dealing with mass groups of enemy vessels and all sorts of things that long since been forgotten that were key elements of it. So, the mission in and of itself is running around a planet that's actually quite gorgeous in terms of all the buildings and everything. There's some great views, and it kind of makes you wish that you could actually explore more of it in the designated area. But it's definitely a cool. The ground portion is actually the best portion of the fifth and final mission of the story arc, with the biggest issue being its cutscene at the very end when you finally catch up to Hakiv. There are issues with Sela's cape in terms of when that scene initiates, where it actually glitches through her body, and both Sela and Hakiv's lips don't move. So it's definitely real funny to look at. And when Hakiv has his last moments telling the player in Obisek that they don't know what's coming, and that the Iconians are going to basically kill them all, blah blah blah. It, the cutscenes in and of themselves have not aged well, and definitely need to rework. That the other cutscenes in Mine Enemy and Frozen have already received. It needs that rework, and the same applies to Coliseum. All in all, the 5-part story arc is definitely a lot of. It provides a lot of background, a lot of lore that is definitely necessary. And the sad part is, while there are references and things that lead up to the story arc on the Klingon Defense Force side, it's definitely subtle. You definitely have to go out of your way to pay attention to everything that is said in key mission in some of the missions that actually make reference to things, and you have to do the Nimbus story arc. So on the Federation side, you can get away with not doing the Nimbus story arc, but it's really important for at least the Klingon side to actually justify and actually give the player more context to what's happening, and it actually serves as a nice bridge and expansion to the things that the player is exposed to over the course of these particular 5 missions. Um, in terms of the legacy of the story arc and how important it is to the long run, it and looking back 9 years to when these missions were first added, you can it was basically the big revelation that at some point the Iconians were going to be involved as a direct antagonist to the Federation and the Klingons. Uh, it just took a long ass time to actually get to that point, because at the time of these missions' initial release, um, it was basically the Borg at the very end with when you got to the level 45. I think it was level 45 cap back in back in the early days, and the Borg were basically it. You got the Romulan expansion, Republic expansion arc, the Delta Rising expansion, and everything associated with that. Um, and again, it wasn't until it was after the Delta expansion, or actually with the Delta expansion and everything involving the Undine, who were kind of like the big antagonist, kind of like reoccurring antagonists for both uh, uh, of the main story. But then you learn that they were basically being manipulated by the Iconians as well. So you kind of get but a lot of the revelation and everything that was basically started with this mission, with these series of missions. And I kind of forget the order of this came, because there were 2 other majors, or actually 3 other major story arcs, but they didn't really tie in or provide the build up to what was to come in the long run with the Iconians. So these this set of missions, its legacy is definitely there as to how important it is to the lore of Star Trek Online. So with that said, this particular weekly commentary has definitely gone a hell of a lot longer than most, as I was summarizing everything, giving my thoughts and opinions on everything associated with these missions. But this was a lot of fun to do. So with that said, my friends, first, again, if you like this, subscribe to this channel, and then come over to Twitch and subscribe and follow me there. Those links are down below. Again, as always, we never know what next week's commentary is going to be until I sit down to actually record it. And of course, Sunday night we'll have the weekly highlight reels, and full streams from Twitch end up getting ported over here to YouTube. So if you were interested in sitting down and watching or skimming through the nonsense that I do, a lot of that will be archived here. So till next time, tighten your friendship bracelets, watch your hangdowns, and we'll see you next time for next week's commentary. Have a good one, folks.